And this is my opportunity to give you an update, to really bring you up to speed on the number of things that may have happened since last we met. It's, as you can imagine, been a busy time here since last we met. We're also at the inception of a new academic year for many of you, and that, even though we're not on an academic calendar, does necessitate a different pace of activity for us as well. So, let's see. Okay. So I will, in our brief period of time together, give you a budget update, what we do know, the HHS and NIH news, as well as updates of some of the things that are happening that would be of interest and relevance for you at NACNR. So first of all, really resounding welcome to our new council members. I've introduced them to you, but here they are with their official photos and credentials, et cetera. We feel very fortunate to have all of these council members cleared and on board. We are just getting through a transition, and things often take a little longer during transitions. So we were very pleased with their spirit, community spirit, and willingness to come to our last council as official guests before we could board them as council members. So again, we really are pleased to have you on board, and we also appreciate your forbearance. It's part of the Introduction to Government 101. So let me just talk a bit about the budget. As is often the case at this time of the calendar year, we don't have final news about the budget yet, so there's only a limited amount of information and a fair amount of speculation. So I will give you the amount of information we have and skip the speculation part. But we do, as you know, the fiscal year, beginning of the new fiscal year is October 1st. Of 17, and we do not yet have a budget, but we will be on a continuing resolution until the early part of December if that's all signed, but it looks very much like that is what we can expect once again this year. And as you look at the budget, if you look at the budget as the trend over the last several years, that is not unusual for this time of year. The middle of December has pretty much been our pattern, except for last year when it took considerably longer. But recall that the way the budget process works is that the president gives a draft budget of what he would like to see. The House produces their budget of what they would like to see. The Senate also produces their budget of what they would like to see. And then typically the House and the Senate confer, literally have a conference, and work out the differences between the two bills. That bill then becomes the omnibus or the cromnibus bill, as it has been called recently, and goes to the president for signature or veto. So all of this does take time, and we are right now in the middle of that process. So, but the budget bills that we have seen so far are very encouraging. There is a great deal of bipartisan support for what the NIH does and for the importance of research, health research, to try to improve the health of our countrymen. And so that's the very exciting news. We understand that demographics and the events of this past week certainly will have some influence on that. So we really can't say at this point in time, but we continue to appreciate the bipartisan support that we are receiving and the encouragement. And all of this we do need to underscore is a result of the hard work of the scientific community and the people who support the science. Now, the budget, when we do get it, and some of you have seen this slide before, but for those of you who haven't, the proportion of what happens to the money is the question that we often get. And when you look at this pie chart, these are the 2016 actual obligations. The 2017 will look very much like it. We're still in 2017, but it will look very much like it. So the proportions stay fairly constant. But when you look at the addition of the research program grants, the RPGs, the centers, other research which mostly support the K awards, and the training awards, part of the R&D, you do look at certainly more than 80% of our budget goes out to the extramural community. So like the other institutes at NIH, most of the appropriation that we'd get does go out to the extramural community to support research and training. The small amount that does not, supports the intramural program, which has been created as in a complementary fashion to the extramural community, so that it focuses on symptom science exclusively and does coordinate with what's going on extramurally. It also is designed so that it provides a number of opportunities for training and research to be done in collaboration with the extramural community. So that we are fortunate in that our program is still relatively new. It is also 6% of our budget, which is smaller than the average across the NIH. The average intramural program across the NIH is 10% of the overall budget. And so we feel that, so we understand that we're working in that direction, but we're just not there yet. The RMS is really research management support, and that is dedicated to support areas of grants management, review, scientific review, and our internal group, and also grants management, which is a fair amount of activity, as you can imagine, as well as program support and program activities. So that's really our overhead. I don't know if that 11 to 10 to 12% has anything to do with what's being proposed as the was proposed as the rate for the extramural community, but that discussion seems to have ended. So you can take that one home. So moving to some of the events in the department, which would be of interest or relevant to you and to us. We have a Surgeon General now. Dr. Jerome Adams has been confirmed as the Surgeon General, and he is a physician from Indiana University, received his degree from Indiana University. Interestingly enough, his undergraduate work was from UMBC, and it was in biophysics and biopsychology. So we feel that he probably can address pretty much the spectrum across with his clinical expertise. So he was prior to assuming this position, was the Commissioner of Health for Indiana. So we're looking forward to working with him. Okay. Dr. Ellner Katz was just this month confirmed as Assistant Secretary overseeing SAMHSA. And this is a position, in fact, she has just been recently promoted. This is Assistant Secretary position overseeing SAMHSA is a little bit different terminology than what you have seen before. But recall, when you look at the neighborhood in the department, SAMHSA is one of our partners, which we expect will increase with the shared concern about the opioid crisis that we are already seeing much closer ties. So we're looking forward to that. And she also has her PhD as well as an MD, and has a great deal of background in psychology and behavior. So we think, as well as government experience. So we're excited about that. Dr. Brenda Fitzgerald was named the Director for Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. She is, her expertise is in obstetrics and gynecology. She also was a Commissioner of Health for Georgia before taking this position. So we are looking forward to working with her. That's a very close working relationship with CDC. Dr. George Saguna has recently been appointed Administrator for Health Resource and Services Administration. His background is, his MD is actually from Greece, but he has his master's and other work that he's done is in cell biology. And he, in addition to his other work, was a fellow at both NIH and also at Navy. So he has a fair amount of research experience as well. So again, these all look like they are going to be very exciting partners to work with, so we're looking forward to that. Moving a little bit closer to home, we have a selection, a candidate for the head of NCI, for director of NCI. Dr. Norman Sharples was selected as the director. Recall, this is a presidential appointment, so he can be selected. He doesn't have to be confirmed by the Senate. He is expected to start any time now. As you know, clearances sometimes take a bit of time, but he's very excited about coming. He is the head of the Cancer Center at University of North Carolina, has experience working at both Duke and North Carolina, and has done some of the very pivotal work in the early development of cancer, and is very committed to his research, is expected to maintain an active lab while he's here. So UNC is really disappointed to lose him, which makes us even more excited that he's coming here. So. I also want to bring to your attention, some of you have already seen this, but it's especially because I saw Jim Gilman just came in the door, our speaker from, will tell us more about the clinical center, but the First in Human Discovery Channel series on the clinical center, if you haven't seen it, it is 3 episodes, but it is a really good exposition of the exciting work that the clinical center does, and so we are really excited that it's being shown for all the good things that it can do. The narrator for this is Jim Parsons, who many of you may know if you're a fan of Big Bang Theory. I happen to be, and if you're not, then people always look at you with a strange face. But he was very excited, and he also appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live as a guest, and if you can pull that up from YouTube, it's worth looking at. He basically came to NIH not knowing about NIH, not being excited or unexcited, but not knowing about it. And he left as a real convert and ambassador. And so seeing him, and when he talks, he basically, you can see the excitement building and how he learned about it and how excited he is. So it's a kind of it's a success story about how you really want people to feel about the NIH. Okay. We also, you've heard quite a bit about the Next Generation Researchers Initiative, and there have been some different versions of it that have appeared in the press. Basically, this is an initiative that NIH has developed to track our early stage investigators. We are concerned that early stage investigators do not always do well in our system, and we have had a number of things put in place to try to monitor and track, and this is the latest of these events. This particular issue is not quite as much of an issue for us because we do fund a pretty high percentage of early stage investigators. Recall that definition is within the first 10 years of finishing your terminal degree, doctoral degree. And so we do have a high application rate from early stage investigators. And so for us, this is not quite as much of a problem, but if you look across the NIH and across all fields, the trend is that we have more of the later stage investigators, some middle stage, and fewer early stage. So we are monitoring our own numbers as well and attempting to make certain that we are tracking and that we are acting in good faith. We just don't have quite the same issue as some of the other institutes. We have demographically more of an issue with senior investigators, that we have fewer competing continuations proportionally than most of the others, just because our field is still developing. So, but keep posted on that because you will be seeing more on it. Now, another area where there's been a great deal of development since last we met is in the area of clinical trials. And there's quite a bit in the press about this, and you'll be seeing even more of it as this rolls out. So the attempt is to better track and characterize the clinical studies that we do and the clinical trials, i.e. studies that are involving patients. And so the idea is that all clinical trials should be recorded, should be entered in clinicaltrials.gov, and they should be, and data should be put in there, and then when they're finished, that should be posted as well. So again, there are quite a few things written, and we have more on the website, as well as Mike Lauer, the extramural website. But the 4 questions here are the questions that need to be answered before you move forward with the study to determine, does the study involve human participants? Are the participants prospectively assigned to an intervention? Is the study designed to evaluate the effect on the participants? And is the effect being evaluated in a health-related biomedical or behavioral outcome? As you can imagine, that really does, the answer to most of those for our studies is yes. And so you will be spending quite a bit more time, I think, reading the materials, discussing these with your program representative to try to determine how you move forward. And we're prepared to help you. We've been having webinars, and the staff have been being prepared to be able to deal with this. But we do anticipate that the rollout will probably not, given the volume of increase in this area, we do anticipate that there may be a bump or two, so we're here to help with that. We're going to try and prevent it, but we're here to help if it does occur. We also, as I spoke to you last time, are moving toward a single IRB policy for all of the multi-center studies that we fund at the NIH. The CTSAs are already employing that, and so that if you have a CTSA in your particular site, it's a good place to start, and for like hints and tips and lessons learned. So the rollout of this will be in the coming year. So this rollout is anticipated in 2018, and I bring your attention to this commentary, which was just recently published, talking about the pros and cons and talking about moving forward on it and the rationale for it. So, as you know, we have NIH-wide funding opportunities as well as a variety of institute activities, funding opportunities that are available. This is just a reminder of the NIH-wide opportunities that are available. And it's interesting, when you look at those, each of those really does address our strategic plan. And I know that was not done on purpose, so our very optimistic take is that we are very much in tune with what all of NIH, or they're much in tune with what we're doing, either way. But it's good to see that fit. Okay, a little bit closer to home here, what are some of the things that have been happening here? Last time I spoke to you about the Science of Caregiving Summit. That was very widely attended. It was a very exciting 2 days, very comprehensive look at the various aspects of caregiver health and caregiver education and training, and some of the issues that caregivers do deal with. Our keynote speaker was Judy Woodruff, who did a really terrific job of setting the tone for the summit. For those of you that were not able to be there that day, it is videocast and archived. And I would suggest, you can go through and pick the particular pieces of the program that you most want to listen to. But I would suggest listening to Judy's overview and her keynote, because she was gave a very candid and comprehensive and inspiring look at what it's like to be a caregiver. She and Al Hunt, her husband's oldest son, Jeffrey, was born with spina bifida, and so he has lived at home to the point he's finished college, is living independently, in independent living. But she does address many of the aspects of the difficulties of being a caregiver and dealing with some of the issues that you do over the lifespan. So it's very inspiring. We have 2 directors' lectures coming up, remaining for 2017. Mary Beth Happ, who is the Director of Research at Ohio State University, will be coming to speak to us on September 20th. She will be speaking on communication with the critically ill patients and their families, and so she will address some of the caregiver issues. The timing is perfect because it's in sync with the summit, but she's very well funded, and her work is quite interesting, so I think you will enjoy that. That also will be videocast and will be archived. And then following that in November, Peg Heikemper is coming from University of Washington. Peg, as you know, is the chairman of the Department of Biophysiological Research there in the School of Nursing, and she will speak to us on her work with gastrointestinal symptoms and interventions for it. And she will also address some of the latest pieces of that work, which do address the genetic components and predispositions. So these should be 2 very interesting talks. We're looking forward to hearing both of them. Also, because we are so committed to community-based research, I wanted to bring this to your attention, the National Academy of Sciences prospectus paper on community-based models of care delivery for people with serious illness. It is, we've had a number of people from the community who are participating in this, and it's a very comprehensive view and a good summary of some of the models that are being addressed and some of the what works and what doesn't work in this area. And so And it does focus mostly on acute serious illness, which we have not, which is not very well systematized. So I think this is something that should be required reading. We also are very proud to announce a special report on recall our PCRC, a Palliative Care Research Cooperative Group, that is a very large collective of the group who provides infrastructure for research, also provides tools and education for doing research, and provides for studies to be carried out in some 70 plus organizations across the country, and also forms the basis for others to do R01 studies and larger cooperatives using this group. So there was just recently a report published that talks about the accomplishments of the group and some of the most important things that we have learned. And it's really, it's a wonderfully comprehensive summary of what has been done, lessons learned, and what they are doing moving forward. So we're very excited about that. This is something that we have supported since its inception. And for those of you that can recall when it started, you'll probably recall that we received a very large bolus from the Common Fund from the Office of the Director when it was maybe still called Roadmap, but it really is something that is intended to stimulate research in the field and support it. So we're very pleased that this was such a positive report published in a really good journal. So just recapping some of the other activities that I won't go into great detail, but we've been very busy out and about with staff going to a variety of different events, presenting the research and so on. So we did participate in the International Council of Nurses in Barcelona, Spain, which was a very high-powered international meeting with a very, very heavy participation from the governments of the various countries, and was attended by some nearly 10,000 people. So we did get a lot of exposure for the science and a lot of networking done. Also, I was pleased to be invited to Florida State University to open up their indigenous, it's an international actually, indigenous nursing research center to give a keynote at the summit and to open the center. And it really is, it's a comprehensive center. It's the first of its type. And it was truly international. I really was expecting it to be more national, but there were representatives from across the country, particularly Australia and New Zealand. But for example, Ethiopia, I did not know that there were 39 different tribes of Ethiopia, and many of whom were represented there. And so, it's sort of, we think of indigenous and we think of diversity in our own country, but to consider the international aspects of across the whole globe, it was pretty impressive. And so it's also reasonably well endowed. So I think we're going to see some interesting research going on there. It is importantly focused on research, and I think that's something which will really hold us in good stead in the future. We have been involved in a number of activities on Capitol Hill and with various arms of Congress. There have been 2 briefings held on the Hill this past, since we met over the summer and just into the fall, on the House and the Senate side, sponsored by a variety of organizations. We also have, I've been requested to give briefings for a number of congressmen from Texas and also Louisiana, so we're getting the whole stroke belt and some of the cardiovascular areas where we do fund quite a bit on chronic illness, particularly interested. Also, I was on the Hill last week to participate in the Oncology Nursing Society Capitol Hill Day. As you know, I'm allowed to go and talk about the science. I can't be on the same podium as a congressman or a senator, and I can't talk about the budget a great deal, but I can talk about the science and the opportunities. And so it's good to be, but I need to be invited. So it's good to be invited to all of these and to have that opportunity, to have that platform to talk about what we do. So just a brief glimpse at some of our pending funding opportunities. Most of these are familiar to you, so I won't go over it, but just to give you an idea of the range. Okay. We have finished our Summer Genetics Institute this year. Again, was very well attended. The group was quite diverse scientifically, and virtually every demographic was quite diverse. And they, once again, I'm not sure how this happens, but I'm thrilled that it does. They came, they worked really, really hard, and they loved every minute of it. So I'm always expecting complaints when you work that hard. But the other part of this is we now have trained over 350 graduates of this program. And they still continue to be very active incorporating genetics into their research projects, into their curriculum, their teaching courses, and also into their clinical practices. They also are more successful than average when they apply for funding from us, and so from NIH, period, us in particular. And so I think that is an amazing incentive for them to come, and also a really good indicator that we are accomplishing what we set out to do. The boot camp on precision health, from omics to data science, was also extremely well attended. We had 165 participants from 75 organizations across the country, and actually some international participation this time. This is the 1-week intensive boot camp. It is intended to bring people up to speed with the latest most current measurement techniques and how to apply them in their studies, and how to, and to get them. A lot of people who come are students, but they're also people who are active in their research programs and needing to add new measurement approaches, and it's a lot faster than doing a sabbatical somewhere. So it's a very popular, it literally does, if either of these events are something you want to go to, or you want your students or trainees to go to, please tell them to apply early. This in particular literally fills up in a few hours, so you really do need to get on it immediately if you're interested. Okay. The Graduate Partnerships Program, where we partner with the individual universities so that the doctoral students can come to campus, do their research on campus with an NIH mentor and their university mentor. That application period is now open, and we are looking for qualified students. We have some amazing students in the program, and we would like to continue that tradition and to continue to increase that cohort. Again, these graduates of this program do extremely well when they leave and go out into the extramural world. They really do get a jump start on their career. They have, coming here, you do have access to virtually all of the advantages of the NIH campus. And working with our intramural program, you'll hear, of course, from the intramural program this afternoon, but it's a very vibrant, excited group. And so it's an amazing atmosphere to work in, plus the NIH intramural program itself is an amazing atmosphere to work in. So again, take a look at that. We have to brag about our trainees, but we also participate in a number of programs. Many of these are local, but as you see, the students do come from across the country as well. And so we've had a very robust group of summer trainees this year in the intramural program. And these trainees, we participate in a variety of programs. So the trainees can be postdocs, they can be graduate students, they can be post-bacs. We even, and this is mostly locally, the high school students also attend. You can see Walter Johnson High School. Most of the high school students come from the local schools for obvious reasons, but they do, they get very excited, and many of them decide they're going to spend a career in research. I have to say, we have a good track record for all of those who have been working with us for the summer, who've been applying for advanced programs. We have a good track record of them getting in from schools of nursing to psychology to medical schools. So again, it's, and one of the reasons that they do like to work with our intramural program is because it's a clinical problem, it works with people, they can understand it, and also because you do have the opportunity to take a piece of the research and complete a project so that you have something that you can potentially present as an abstract, or at least follow it up when it does happen. So it's a very good learning situation, I would say. Congratulations to Polly Joseph, who is named Acting Assistant Clinical Investigator. She has joined us originally as a postdoc, decided that NIH had a lot of opportunities, and so she applied for and was accepted as a assistant clinical investigator in ACI, which, as you know, we often use that as a sort of a pre-tenure track position so that people can master the system, get their research started, and then decide whether they want to stay and do that or not. It doesn't mean they will, but the acting piece is really more because we're still getting through the process in our transition. But she did compete and was awarded this. So we're very pleased to have her on board. She has already received funding from the Office of Workforce Development here on campus, and also from she's received fellowship also from Rockefeller University. So our intramural folks do actually, unlike many, they do apply for funding, and happily they get it. Dr. Katy Mayer, speaking of getting funding, Dr. Katy Mayer, who is a relatively new tenure track investigator, has just received an NIH Director's Innovation Award. It's a bench to bedside award for her work with young children who have rare diseases, neuromuscular disorders. And so she's this is very exciting. It's the second one she has received, and this one is an advanced award. So it really is, and it's $200,000 a year for her to do her science. So it's very exciting from an honorific point of view, but it's also exciting from a fiscal point of view for her. Dr. Jessica Gill, who is speaking today, has been named a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. This is a very great honor, and so we're really pleased for Jessica and congratulate her on that honor. And we'll be clapping at her induction ceremony later this month. So just a couple of things in terms of staff news, people that you will be interacting with as you move forward. I mentioned earlier Dr. Pamela Tamez has taken over the position of the intramural training director. She also is still acting because our HR processes are taking some time to go through. But she's already undergone a baptism by fire, in that she, in addition to everything else the training director does, overseeing all the trainees, she also has done the Summer Genetics Institute and the Bootcamp with 160-some people in it. And she's actually, I think this picture was taken afterwards, so she's still smiling. And so we're happy. We also have a new health scientist administrator has joined our team, Rebecca Rizzoli. Rebecca comes to us most recently from the National Institute of Diabetes, Digestive and Kidney Disorders and Kidney Diseases. Rebecca has her background in genetics. She was the head of the Precision Medicines Biobank in NIDDK. And so she's really has the expertise in genetics and also data management, which we're pleased at. Before NIDDK, she was in the National Institute of Drug Abuse. So she has been at NIH for a while. Her background is in genetics, cell biology. She studied at Harvard and has been at NIH for a while. So we're really happy to welcome her aboard as well. So there are additional handouts at the door describing in more detail some of the things that are happening that might be of interest to you, but I didn't want to go over those in great detail when you can take them home and study and peruse them there. But I would invite you all to visit the website. I'm available all day for questions, and tomorrow as well, of course. But I would invite you to visit the website to peruse. We have a fairly robust library of YouTube videos now. Recall that whatever it is that we do here at NIH and at NINR, that virtually 90 to 99% of that is filmed, archived, and available to you. So that if you can't get here for a particular event, it's not feasible or it just doesn't fit your schedule, that you can still attend, in parentheses, as it were, so that you can participate. That also goes for all the director speakers and the famous lecturers that come as well, because we do want you to know that this information is available to you, so that NIH and NIR belongs to you as well. And so we want to invite you to participate telectronically, if not in person. So again, thank you all so much for your attention, and I will finish my report now, and we'll move on to the next event. But again, thank you for your attention, and we will be open for questions as we go on.